Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 21. I'll tell you, boy, that had me more prolapsed than Daddy's ABR1. This meme is synonymizing prolapsed with collapsed, the former meaning part of an organ displaced from the body, and the latter meaning fallen down or giving way. The ABR1 is a musical instrument bridge that is part of the tunematic system designed by Ted McCarty and introduced on a guitar in 1953. After long periods of time, the ABR1 can slightly collapse under the tension of the strings it supports, and due to the precision required for a guitar to be properly playable, even a bit of give can cause very noticeable issues. At first, this sag may seem like a design or manufacturing flaw, as the bridges are die-cast, leading them to be weaker than they would be if they were forged. However, the issue arises more so from break angle of the strings behind the bridge at the tailpiece. Collapse can be mitigated by raising the tailpiece or wrapping the strings over the tailpiece, creating a shallower break angle and putting less weight on the bridge. Using thinner strings also helps reduce tension on the bridge, as it takes less force to get the guitar strings to the correct pitch. As for Tommy Lee Jones's prolapsed organ, I don't know what he ate or did, but I bet selling Daddy's Gibson would cover the medical bill. I hope it was worth it. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 22. 8 Tauri, 8 shol'vas, 8 Asgard, love Dakara, love kelno'reem, love Kree, simple as. This is a version of the simple as meme which satirizes some British soccer fans as tribalistic meatheads and is found in the same spectrum as the day in the life of a true Brexit geezer memes, but on the other political end. The person having a point is a member of the Jaffa, a humanoid species from the planet Dakara within the Stargate media franchise. As an analogy, the Jaffa are kind of like the clones in Star Wars or the War Boys in Mad Max. The Jaffa were indoctrinated to believe that Lord Apophis was a god and they were not actually slaves. That is, until the Jaffa Rebellion, of course. Thus, the connection with the British geezers. Tauris are humans, Asgard are humanoids who were the protectors of the Milky Way. Kelno'reem is a Jaffa ritual similar to sleep. Kree is a catch-all phrase that loosely translates to attention. Shol'vas are Jaffa traders such as Teal'c of Chulak. Teal'c is a main character throughout SG-1 and was portrayed by Christopher Judge. He learned early on that Apophis, former lord of the Goulds, wasn't a god, and his attitude soured toward his masters. The rest, as they say, is history. But not before joining Apophis one more time in search of a new host for Amunet. Classic Teal'c. But seriously, researching this video made me very self-conscious of the amount of Stargate fandom wiki tabs I had open on my computer. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 23, The Architecture of Symbolic Computers, is a book written by computer engineer Peter Kogi and published in 1991, detailing 2 possible futures of computer architecture as successors to the aging von Neumann architecture. Architecture in this case means literally how a computer is constructed. The established von Neumann model is analogous to a body composed of different organs, a processing unit, memory, etc., with certain built-in limitations. Whereas the new models discussed in this book, function-based and logic-based computing, introduced new paradigms and focus on different methods of computation, processing complex symbols rather than simple numbers. The antenna-looking thing is a visualization of multiple objects moving through time and space. Mapping in this way is called time geography, with geographer Torsten Hagerstrand referring to these diagrams as space-time aquariums. Time is on the z-axis, and location is on the x and y-axis. The original illustration represented a school. At the beginning of the day, students are all located in different areas of town, then they travel to school, where they congregate in a classroom, then they go home. This image was taken at Burning Man in 1990. The monolith with bones at its base is a reference to the 1968 sci-fi movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. In the movie, mysterious pillars watch over space for signs of life. In an early scene, an ape can be seen using tools for the first time after the arrival of the monolith. The diagram below is a timeline of Christian history. A schism is a split of a religion into multiple bodies, usually due to differences in belief. The diagram of the 5 transcendental radiations is taken from an article from vastabrupt.com, a website based within a genre of literary fiction derived from the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, or CCRU, a collective that spawned a writing style that blended elements of theory, cyberpunk, and horror. Think of it as a Marvel Cinematic Universe or the non-canonical Star Wars Legends, but focused more on fantastical cyberpunk philosophy. In this diagram, each ring represents the layers of the Atlantean Cross, a purported symbol from the lost city of Atlantis. As a knowledge seeker progresses inward, they realize not the truth, but each prior layer's untruth, supposedly. The piecemeal elements composing this meme have been recontextualized to create a different meaning that only tangentially relates to the original parts. If we suspend our disbelief and skepticism and temporarily view this meme as not simply a nonsensical arrangement of cool-looking images and text, we can then interpret it this way. The many attractor pylons are spread out over the surface of secular history, waiting for a civilization to develop religion. These pylons then came together at a site where a unified religion was invented. That religion revolved around discovering the meaning of death. It lasted a while, and then many different religions exploded into being. This image was created by artist and writer Symbolic, who used this image within an article titled "The Mainframe Behind Your Dreams." Symbolic's usage and interpretation of what this image means is perhaps fundamentally different from mine, as Symbolic's meaning may rely on a level of background lore found within CCRU adjacent spaces, and mine is focused mostly on what could be decoded from the direct representations of what were found within the overall image, not what they may symbolically mean within a CCRU narrative. As once an image is released into the public by the artist surrenders control of the artwork's quote-unquote true meaning. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 24, The Myth of Ankle Support. Dudes be like, get some shoes with ankle support. My brother in Christ, you are perpetuating a myth created by the hiking boot lobby. Sandwich. This is more of a fact-check episode than an esoteric episode, as I wanted to see how much truth was in this claim. There is, sort of, a hiking boot lobby. The Footwear Distributors and Retailers of America, FDRA, represent nearly all of the Fortune 500 footwear companies in the US and represent 95% of footwear sales. However, and unsurprisingly, the issues they fund are more businessy: tariffs, intellectual property, sustainability, etc. Looking for nefarious studies on ankle support, I couldn't find any notable ones that supported the idea that ankle support is important in people without injuries. Looking through hiking boot websites, many mention their boots having ankle support, but that information was usually presented in a neutral way and not specifically saying that the shoe was better because of it. This was also true for Keens, the boots pictured on this meme. Keen posts articles about their hiking boots, but the only one I could find making a positive value judgment about ankle support was a post specifically written by a person and not by staff writers like most other posts were. As for if ankle support is a myth, I'd say that unless you have an ankle injury and need immobilization to heal, yes, it's a myth. Multiple studies show that the healthiest way to walk is barefoot, or with shoes that have a very thin sole. Big cushions or shoes with ankle support can, quote, attenuate adequate stimuli and put unnecessary pressure on other parts of your legs, such as different parts of your feet or knees, unnaturally wearing your body down faster. The truth is, we may never know how this myth started, but it seems mostly perpetuated by anecdotal accounts. Touting ankle support may help sell shoes, so companies aren't necessarily incentivized to correct people, but ultimately companies just do what consumers want, and if they want shoes without ankle support, they'll make those too. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 25, The Best Paint Colors for a Kid's Room. This image shows an inspirational color palette for a kid's room. However, it's clear that these are not the original colors. What is lurking in this meme? If we use the eyedropper tool to get the hexadecimal triplet for each color, that is, the color code your web browser uses to render colors on websites, among other things, we now have this. Let's arrange these so that every number has its own cell. Now we have what looks like a number matrix. If we take all the numbers and add them up by row and column, we get something that looks like this. Each way you add up the numbers, the total for all rows or columns is 113, a prime number. But we also see that each row and column individually add up to numbers ranging from 9 to 26. If we convert the numbers to letters, assigning 1 to A, 2 to B, and so on, the bottom spells out VLOLs. That could be gibberish, but to me it sounds like very laughing out louds. The rows are more interesting. That spells out ITSLOSS, or It's Loss, referencing a popular Control-Alt-Delete comic known for people creating abstract representations of a famous strip titled Loss. This is one such representation. Well, these aren't great colors for a kid's room, but luckily they won't be needed anyway. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 26, The Puzzling Debate Over the Existence of the Historic Candlelight Inn. Allegedly opening its doors in 1944 in Beloit, Wisconsin, the Candlelight Inn served as a guest house for those traveling on business between Madison and Chicago. Increasing in popularity, in 1951, the inn unveiled the Candlelight Club, a cocktail lounge that hosted nightly music for the following half of the century. But by 2008, a dilapidated husk of its former self, the inn permanently closed. It couldn't, or refused to, adapt to a changing world. The problem is, no one can agree on whether it actually existed. The person who reintroduced the public to the Candlelight Candlelight Inn was musician DPCD, who claimed to have performed there on June 22, 2001, between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m., and who recently released recordings of 3 live sets the band allegedly performed in the Candlelight Club Cocktail Lounge. This May, to celebrate the rediscovered 24-year-old tapes and their first ever public release, DPCD re-performed the concert, nearly word for word and note for note, even reciting from a script all the stage banter that the members had said 24 years ago. After the show, a few listeners confronted Alec Watson, the band's leader, about the legitimacy of his story and of the inn. Watson later addressed the skeptics, releasing both a photo and video of him standing in front of the Candlelight Inn sign, showing metadata that the photo was taken in 2008. He had previously released other images implying but never explicitly stating that they were of the Candlelight Inn. So, is it real? I mean, the sign looks pretty real to me. While perhaps simply defenders of DPCD, people online claim the Candlelight Inn is real, stating they've been there, but also people who have lived in Beloit all their lives claim it never existed. Using the power of the internet, one can easily find the true location of this image. However, when looking at the street view, we are met with a symbol literally next to, but more importantly, apropos to, the Candlelight Inn, Bigfoot. Stay with me here, I'm not getting into conspiracy theory territory. Rather, we now need to examine the music and myth DPCD has cultivated. Let's start with an analogy. When test audiences first saw Napoleon Dynamite, many didn't know what decade the movie was situated in. For that reason, they added a piece of ephemera to the opening title sequence with the date on it to clue in audience members that the movie took place in the modern day, 2004-ish. While this may sound absurd in hindsight, the reality is that time moves differently in places like Preston, Idaho, where Napoleon Dynamite was shot, or Beloit, Wisconsin. In these smaller Midwestern towns, people drive older cars, houses have dated interiors, restaurants keep the same menu forever. Change happens so slowly that outsiders can feel as if they've stepped into a different era of American life, and they kinda have. These small towns, or pockets within them, can become islands of timelessness. People bashed the movie for being absurd and unrealistic. However, to others who live on similar islands, it felt very, very real. DPCD created a recording that channels this feeling of unbelievable hyper-specific timelessness by virtue of the music itself and how we contextualize its release in a veil of Midwestern myth. The songs themselves feel as if they could have been written and recorded any time from the 20s through the 1960s, and were written with the same techniques many songwriters found in the Great American Songbook used during their time. Listeners of oldies radio wouldn't even bat an eye if a song like Good Things Come to Those Who Wait came on. However, this is more than musical pastiche. DPCD has encapsulated and archived the feeling of walking into a still active space lost to time via immaculate music and deadpan banter. A feeling like you've just set foot onto a 1950s high-budget movie set, but none of the actors break character, even when the cameras stop rolling. It's a strange feeling, disbelief mixed with curiosity mixed with a sense of amazement. As for if the Candlelight Inn is real, well, there are literally multiple places called the Candlelight Inn found throughout the United States, but none that I could find in Beloit, Wisconsin. But then again, it's hard to prove the non-existence of something that someone else claims no longer exists. But to finish with one more analogy, if you're wasting away in Margaritaville, does it really matter what city and state that Margaritaville is in? Does that change anything? No, you're still in Margaritaville.
You can't say I didn't try.
Esoteric Meme Breakdown, Episode 27, E. This is a variation of the Lord Marquand/E memes that usually feature some random image and a capital E. These are generally absurdist non sequitur jokes. This is a medical-grade aluminum pressurized oxygen cylinder capable of delivering 23 cubic feet of oxygen. This one specifically is advertised as being sufficient for medical or industrial use. That could mean anything from delivering oxygen to a person or for welding with an additional cylinder of acetylene. E, in this case, is not a non sequitur, but the size of the tank. This is a common size for oxygen cylinders, as it has good capacity and is still small enough to be semi-portable and attachable to a wheelchair or mobility scooter. Oxygen therapy can be used for those with a variety of conditions such as COPD, pneumonia, sleep apnea, asthma attacks, and more. I know I've received accidental texts and emails from people that had just a single letter in them. It always brings me joy when it happens. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, Episode 28, Spongebob worships Mollie Katzen. In 1973, the Moosewood restaurant opened in Ithaca, New York, focusing on dishes made from local and sustainable ingredients. Its menu quickly became vegetarian and found success in the hilly college town, where many aligned with the restaurant's countercultural ethos. Dogma aside, their goal was to simply prepare great food that also happened to be sustainable. People ate it up. In fact, it was getting to the point where so many patrons were asking for recipes, the staff thought it easier to create a cookbook. The first 1974 print run of the Moosewood Cookbook was limited to 800 copies and led to multiple self-published reprints before the book was picked up by a publishing house in 1977. From there, it spread like wildfire and became a top-selling cookbook, now ranked number 6 on the New York Times' list of most influential cookbooks of the past 100 years. This also won a prestigious James Beard Award, and first edition 1974 copies sell for hundreds of dollars, with a pretty clean version on sale now with an asking price of $5,000. Mollie Katzen was the illustrator for the interior pages, handwriting all the text and drawing the illustrations. While it was truly a collective effort, Katzen emerged as the face of the book. She later went on to create more books, including the celebrated Enchanted Broccoli Forest cookbook and even some cookbooks for kids. Now a plant-based food icon with a cult-like following, she and the Moosewood Collective paved the way for many to see that vegetarian food didn't have to be something bland and mushy, but could in fact be enjoyed. Let's hope Mr. Krabs doesn't catch Spongebob in this blasphemous act within the walls of the meat lover's paradise that is the Krusty Krab. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 29. If you strollin' deep in the forest and see this, run. They gon' get you to cop some beeswax candles, water sugar, and local bacon. This meme shows a network of tubing used for the collection of maple tree sap that will then be boiled down to create maple syrup. In lieu of using buckets, many larger-scale syrup operations tap the tree and use tubing that drains the sap into a single location, both for ease and sanitation. These networks of tubing can either be run as a natural vacuum, where gravity assists the sap into a container, or with a pump that forces sap down the tubes. After the sap is collected, it's boiled until it reaches a desired sweetness and consistency. It can take anywhere from 20 to 80 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup, depending on the sugar content in the sap. Usually it's around 40 gallons in average conditions. Unless an entity has thousands of taps running on their property, it can be hard to make a profit producing maple syrup. So, many smaller producers also operate gift shops, which is what this meme is alluding to. Syrup can then be sold at cost, a slight loss, or for a slight profit, because other higher margin products, such as bacon, candles, trinkets, etc., can make up for the syrup's bad margins. Quite frankly, I'm happy to buy a trinket with my syrup, maybe a t-shirt with a hand-drawn maple tree on it. I like that sort of thing. Esoteric Meme Breakdown, episode 30. He's a 10, but he mutters quando, omni, flunkus, moritati every night before lying down. This is a pseudo-Latin phrase that, at least within the Possum Lodge, translates to, when all else fails, play dead. The phrase is muttered by members of the Possum Lodge, a men's club on Possum Lake in Canada, before reciting the man's prayer. I'm a man, but I can change if I have to, I guess. If you still can't imagine this as a major red flag, members of the lodge are notorious for their unkempt appearance, over-reliance on duct tape, and a general indifference to the odors they emit. The Possum Lodge is a fictional lodge found within the Red Green Show, a Canadian TV series that originally aired from 1991 to 2006. The show was stocked with Canadian knuckleheads who generally thought they knew more about stuff than they actually did, and generally ended up in jams because of it. The series canonized duct tape as a cure-all within North American men's culture, dubbing it the handyman's secret weapon. Ladies, when stalking his social media before a first date, if you see him wearing this patch on his fishing vest, tell him you just got bad diarrhea and stay home. Otherwise, he'll be pulling up in the most dilapidated car you've ever seen. Thank you for watching, and in the words of Red Green, keep your stick on the ice. I'm pulling for ya. We're all in this together.